interview with John Warner, the creative director for Anthem.
Which one? There's been tons of interviews I've seen recently.
It is the Game Informer lingering questions on Anthem video. It's 45 minutes long, and they just posted it yesterday.
No.
So once again, I'm on Game Informer's dick again. I don't want Joe Juba and Ben Hansen to think that I'm angling for a job, but if you need someone, I'm not going to work for cheap. Unfortunately, I already have a career. I'm used to having a salary, so I can't be an intern. But, if you're willing to match my current salary to have
You would leave our lucrative podcast for Game Informer?
It's like, well, our podcast isn't that lucrative, but
yeah.
It could
give us money.
One day. No, I'm such a fan. Every time I see their coverage, I think, holy crap, this is really what I would be doing. If I was doing interviews, I thought Ben Hansen actually asked really good questions. Couple of interesting tidbits out of that, in particular to Ben Hansen's line of questioning. Towards the end, he asked about Mac Walters. Well, technically, he asked about the Andromeda development crew. He said, how much of Andromeda's team moved over to Anthem? John Warner said, a lot. He said, what about Mac Walters? What's Mac Walters doing? Is he working on Anthem? And John Warner kind of stumbled a little bit. He kind of said, oh, yeah, he's kind of working on that. And Ben Hansen said, oh, on what? What part of it is he working on? And he's like, well, he's kind of like an overall IP director. And he's like, of Anthem or just like in general? And he's like, well, like what's his title? Ben Hansen goes, does he have a title? And John Warner kind of tried to play it off as like, Grand Poobah, Grand Vizier, kind of a joke thing. And Ben Hansen's like, no, really, come on, like what is he doing? And he's like, well, technically he's still creative director. And he's like, of Anthem? Because John Warner's the creative director of Anthem. Mm-hmm. And John Warner goes, well, of the project that he's working on.
Ah.
And I was like, that's not Dragon Age, because I don't think Mac Walters has ever worked directly on, or maybe he was one of the associate writers on Dragon Age Origins.
I don't remember. Dragon Age is currently lacking a creative director, but they've already said Dragon Age, so I'm surprised that they're not just connecting the two. So is there a mysterious,
That's what
third?
I'm getting at. If he didn't say Dragon Age, it must be something else.
That's interesting.
So there was that, and then also I felt we should talk about it because now as the Anthem developments continue, I'm worried about correcting the record on things that I've said or things that we've said.
Uh-huh.
So Ben Hansen asked John Warner directly, will there ever be a point in time post-launch when Anthem will have an offline mode? John Warner said definitively, no, there will not.
Okay.
And which is weird because he answered a lot of questions with we'll see or TBD or we might think about that. This was one of the few questions he said yes or no to directly. He did not hesitate. He said no.
Okay. I guess it's some way the game is designed just inherently cannot be offline then.
Yeah, which bummed me out because when I listened to the episode, I think it was our last episode, when you mentioned the SimCity comparison of I was so excited. You gave me hope. I was like, yes, that's a good point. They did that.
I would believe that what he said, no, but they did say the same thing about SimCity. I don't want to give hope when there is none, but
no, give me hope, Caitie. Come on. now I remembered that too. I'm like, oh yeah, there was that. That was why it was controversial because they refused to do it at first.
Yeah, and then mods came out where they cracked it and stuff like that. So maybe modders, if you're really into it and you figure out how to crack it, maybe you'll break the way for everyone else.
If anybody can do it, it's Wavebend. Come on. Our old buddy Wavebend.
But
I think that was really about. Oh, and then the last one that I found to be somewhat interesting. He mentioned it was a weird comparison because he was talking about the differences in the way that some of the people have talked about romances. Mark Dara and John Warner have kind of said, well, no romances. And then Casey Hudson kind of said, well, no romances. We don't want to promise a romance of Bioware caliber that people expect and then not deliver. There's kind of flirtation, there's relationships, etc. And then John Warner compared it oddly to KOTOR 1. He said, he said, in Knights of the Old Republic, you get to have relationships with that crew. You get to, he even kind of said, Bastila, which to me, Bastila is a romance. And then he said, but it's not to the level of other Bioware games, but it's kind of like KOTOR 1. And I was like, to me, KOTOR 1 has romances then. You can romance Karth and Bastila.
Yeah, I think there's like a wiki on like how to romance, those people. Because I remember when I tried to play, like I was all into Karth because the other two were women, and I didn't want to do that.
Oh yeah, Juhani. I said Karth and Vassal. I forgot about Juhani.
Yeah, I think everyone does because she's a bit scary looking. But
she's a cat, so.
Yeah. So I remember her voice being weird. Is that just me? Am I making it up? It's been so long since I tried to play that game. Anyway, but well, okay. I wonder if I wonder if this is either a backtracking and they've suddenly added it, or if it was there the entire time.
I think it's possible that maybe they've added it. I mean, that was the whole point, right? They keep saying, like, well, we might add stuff. We might add new adventures with the companion that you like. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe they're pivoting quickly.
Oh, like, just now I was looking at Twitter, and Mark Dara, he's still answering questions. It's been, like, almost a month. Anyway. But,
he doesn't sleep. He's just for 1 month straight. No sleeping, no eating, no showering. He's connected to Twitter.
But someone asked him, is it, I think specifically it was worded, is it time to, like, go over characters yet? Because I want to know about characters. And he said no. So they're specifically not going over characters for a reason. So I don't know if they're still building them or what. I know, like, the demo that came out. This episode's not about Anthem. What are we doing? The demo that came out, you were introduced to a couple characters. So there are some. I just wondered. I don't know.
I think the Bioware team has done a great job of we have gone, a full year of just almost nothing but pure speculation. And over the past month or so, they've actually been delivering info. And so, yeah, I just thought, like, because we're not going to do another dedicated Anthem episode, I don't want that lingering.
Are we, though?
Oh, we might, but
okay.
I know we're probably not going to do one for the next 4 episodes, right? Because we've kind of semi got, or 3 or 4 episodes that we have semi planned out. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure, like, we didn't say anything and then go, oh man, information came out after that and it's totally flipped what we were predicting.
Mm-hmm. Surprisingly, we are human, and sometimes what we say is very, very wrong.
I mean, we could be human, as we established before we started recording. You might be a replicant.
Without the recording of me, like me sounding like a robot, that makes no sense out of context.
For people who couldn't hear that part, as soon as we got on the Skype call, well, not Skype call, we use Google Hangouts, but as soon as we got on the call, Caitie sounded a bit like a Cylon with that like weird modulation. Yeah,
that always happens to me. If you know how to fix that, hit me up, because I've changed computers and mics. I think at this point it's just me. But anyway, let's get to what we're actually supposed to talk about.
Let's do it.
So today what we wanted to do, this has been highly requested. Hopefully we can get through all of the choices, because there's a lot of them. But specifically debating choices in Dragon Age Inquisition. So I'm talking about, I think the major ones we get is the ruler for Orlais, the Wardens, to drink of the Well of Sorrows or not, Cole, and I think that was about it, right? Oh, disbanding the Inquisition or keeping it. So, where do you want to begin?
Do we go chronologically, or do we go for the one that's got the most meat? Let's go for the one that has the most meat, but I don't know what that is. What do you feel is the one that's like the most, requires the most conversation?
We almost pretty much started just talking about it off recording, the ruler of Orlais, because you have an opinion that I think is wrong.
That's a good place to start, I guess. So I lean Gaspard heavily. More recently, I think that's a more recent development. I just thought he was a douche at first. I know I didn't go with him on my first playthrough because I just felt like his accent and the posturing, I wasn't a fan of him. I think it's just been, I try to make all of my decisions sort of based on role play more than anything else. No, I just thought that Gaspard eventually became like the more pragmatic choice. I understand he's not exactly a good dude. He's kind of a maniac in some sense, but I also just think like Orlais is in possibly the most precarious situation that they've been in generations, and that they need kind of a firm hand.
Okay. So why can't Celine do that? Or Briala?
She's a weak bitch. No, I'm just kidding. No, not Briala. Not Briala. Celine just strikes me as being that totally like she is royalty, and then I'm not a fan of people in funny hats with jewels on, and just not a big fan of like monarchies and such. And so like I'm not a huge fan of like military dictatorships either, which is maybe said more what Gaspard is. But Selene, I think she's maybe a little too much mired in the politics. Briala is a good argument though, because Briala seems like in some way maybe she's portrayed as being the best choice. She's like the combination of the two. I just think the whole like ruling from the shadows thing sort of interjects a sort of inherent unfairness. It's like it's one thing that you don't have a democracy. It's another thing that even your monarchy isn't transparent. Like that's kind of weird to me.
Question, because I pulled it out here. Have you read The Masked Empire?
I have not. Is there information in there that would change my mind? This
is literally about the dynamics between Selene Briala and Gaspard.
Okay, so I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Well, here's the thing, though. I think it is a little bit unfair that, people's mind change after you read this thing. Like, how, like, it's kind of weird to have a whole bit of like pretty important lore for your choices all wrapped up into, how long is this book, like 300 pages or something? Yeah, almost 400 page novel. So like it's at the same time one of my favorite novels of the series, so I don't like mind it, but it also kind of is iffy.
Well, to that point, just to interject real quick, Mass Effect Initiation, I've said if you don't read that book, you don't really understand Alec Ryder, Cora, or in a weird way even Sam. I really feel like a lot of the Cora haters would like her more if they read Initiation.
And out of curiosity, does she talk a lot about the Asari? Like, I know this is half a joke, but I am genuinely curious.
No, she does. I mean, she mentions it, right? Like, before she leaves that detail to come to the initiative. And yeah, that's kind of how it doesn't start with her being with the Asari. It starts with her basically joining the initiative. But she talks about how, more in depth of what she mentions in the game, her mentor thinks that she needs to, I don't want to spoil the book. Out of her relationship with Alec Ryder and what he expects from her, it's exactly what her former mentor wanted for her. Okay. Cora wasn't really believing in anything. She was just kind of like an overachiever, like an A student who doesn't have a lot of passion. Mm-hmm. And her mentor knew that she was never going to get that really with the Asari. Like, she needed something that, because in some sense, because she wasn't Asari. Like, this isn't yours and you've adapted really well to a culture that's not technically yours and everything. He was like, but you need to do something that's like your mission, your personal journey. You're always going to be sort of in our shadow here. So she kind of forced her out to go to the initiation. And then she kind of felt like, oh, crap. Well, now I'm in Alec Ryder's shadow. But I like Alec a lot more in the book as well. Like, he's still tough and kind of hard-nosed, but in a weird way, it's almost like he's a better father to Cora than he is to his own kids. And he's tough on her, but he kind of gets the same idea of like, you need to be the star of your own show. Like, you need to grow. You need to do this and that. I like the book a lot.
I muted that mic, but not this mic. Anyway. Well, okay. I've been thinking maybe I want to start reading the Mass Effect books just to like understand those things. But that's further down the road. Anyway, let's back to the
Dragon
topic.
Age.
Yeah. So I guess I think at this point, let's just discuss the rulers, each of them. Gaspard, let's start with him. Now, in the book, like I actually think he comes off a lot better in the book. Like, he's very honorable. Like, there's a whole, like, I'm just going to spoil the book here, by the way. I'm just throwing out this. Or do you mind, Jordan, if I spoil the book?
No, go for it. My reading list is full enough. If I'm going to get to it, I'm going to get to it down the road.
That's fair. One of, like, the major scenes in the book is that, okay, so when you go to Emprise du Lion, there's, like, this blonde-haired guy that's like, oh, I gotta defeat Imshale at the castle. You know that guy?
Wait, say it again.
So there. Okay, when you go to Emprise du Lion, there's this guy called Michael Deschavin or whatever. And he's like this Orlesian blonde guy with a sword. He's like, we gotta go get the keep and defeat Imshale and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah.
He's in the book. He was originally Selene's like champion. And so, like, him and Gaspard are fighting, and then, like, there's this whole plot I'm not going to go into. But Briala essentially gets him to stop fighting, and Gaspard doesn't, kill him for whatever reason, because he's very honorable. He doesn't want to, like he was a chevalier, and he, like, still really holds to the honorable code. Like, he's not going to kill someone who stopped fighting, type of thing. So he's actually a pretty good dude. I think in Inquisition he comes a lot more asshole-ish than he actually does in the novel. And he technically wants the crown because it was supposed to be his to begin with, and then Celine sniped it away from him because when she was around 16 years old, she did this huge power play move and ended up actually murdering Briala's parents, which is why they broke up.
That'll do that to a relationship.
Yeah. So I think Gaspard isn't as bad a choice as everyone is afraid of, especially those who haven't read the novel. I will say, one thing I don't like about it, and having these thoughts make it questionable as if I should be picking the ruler of Orlais or not, but he definitely wants to invade Ferelden again. That is definitely something on his to-do list, and that's why he wanted to take over and make the Empire great again, so to speak. So I think that one reason I don't like picking Gaspard is because I don't want another war in Ferelden, because I like Ferelden and I like the current king they have. So
that's probably the strongest piece of evidence.
Orlais. So, like, should the Inquisitor be picking the ruler of Orlais based on the fact that they want Orlais to be weaker, so to speak?
I mean, I think it raises the overall question of, like, I mean, just in general. I mean, you stated it, right? Like, why is the Inquisition meddle so much in the affairs of another country? Well, not another country, of a country that they're having so much influence. I mean, that really is the question. That I guess from a game standpoint or from a story standpoint, it's like, because it's cool.
Yeah.
Because Dragon Age Inquisition and that mission, that whole series, I mean, come on. I mean, the Winter Palace section of Dragon Age Inquisition is one of my favorites. I mean, in the entire series. It's so good. It's just so good.
I liked it. A lot of people hate it, though. I'm not one of those people. I love it. That's my favorite mission of the entire game. I think you too. So it's...
No, you get a mod for the outfits, and it's perfect. The only thing that's wrong with it is the outfits.
Especially if you get a good dress mod. Mwah.
Yeah.
So I guess, like, with Gaspard, what you're signing up for is more military action, someone who's less into, like, the game, so he's going to be a little bit more honest with his dealings, which is something you might want. And then also probably wants to foray in Velden. Jesus Christ. Invade Ferelden. And maybe even a little bit of Navarra, because there's a city near the edge there that's been iffy. So he could possibly start a lot of wars, which...
I think invading Ferelden is definitely the downside. Like, that's the strongest downside for him. I think one of the things that I thought about in that is more, should there be a Tevinter invasion? Like, you want Gaspard in general.
I see what you mean. Okay.
Also Qunari.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you want someone who's going to have a very strong military aspect because Thedas is gearing up for something bad, then Gaspard is probably going to be the guy you want. Another thing is that, like, the nobles, I'm like 99% sure on this, but it's been a while since I've listened to the ending slides on this, but the nobles are more for Gaspard than the other two rulers. Because, like, they want Orlais to be great again. They want to be a big, political power of Thedas, because right now it's kind of fallen a little bit. Now, let's go on to Celine. What Celine has done, instead of doing a lot of the political stuff, she's tried to make peace with the nations, and in the past couple of years, there's been a lot more, like, cultural wins, so to speak. So, like, there's been more paintings and more arts and sciences, and she's put on a lot more plays, so it's a lot more cultural stuff being built up in the nation. And again, more friendly with the others, like Ferelden and whatnot. Like, she almost married Kaelin, so until he died.
There's, like, the intelligent, rational part of me that recognizes how important it is to have cultural advancements, and then there's like the dude bro trapped inside of you going, like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna throw paintings at the Tevinters? You're gonna throw
Well, what's the Queen Asha, is that her name, of Antiva? But there is one queen of Antiva where her she wanted to make Antiva a giant political powerhouse. And the way she did that was just have a bunch of kids and then through connections marry them off to all of the important people in Thedas. So now everyone is family. And now no one wants to attack Antiva because their wife is from Antiva or their husband's from Antiva. So
that's good.
Like I think Celine's even slightly Antivan because of that union. So it's probably as we get further away from that point, it's not going to be as effective. But like apparently her bloodline runs in Celine, Sebastian, a bunch of Tevinters. Like there's a whole bunch of people.
You know, to that point, if I were to more seriously on the aspect of Celine or the benefit of expanding the culture, like if I were to treat that subject more seriously and also kind of put my political hat on, there's a very prevalent idea in the real world that politics follow culture. Mm-hmm. Culture leads politics, so to speak, and so I could see that. Even though this is more speculation, I don't know that there's necessarily something in the game or the books that confirms this, but that something like that is almost like a macro level of the game itself, right? So under Celine, the game is getting better, more refined, new levels to it are being uncovered, so that if you have if Orlais is sort of driving an export of plays, like you said, art, all these other things. You lead the culture, right? So in that point, you end up leading politics across Thedas because you have this cultural influence. Like that could be a really like high level, next level way to interpret Celine's value.
Because apparently Orlais is currently leading in cuisine and fashion, like all over Thedas. And if people start eating the Orlesian, wearing Orlesian, then
don't invade them. They're cool.
Yeah. So it can work too. So I think Celine's actually pretty decent. Briala is the interesting one because one, to get her to rule, she needs to like puppet master Ganon. Jesus,
we just jumped game series.
Well, puppet master Ganon's like a thing anyway, but like Gaspard, like she has no ruling experience besides like she was lovers with Celine for a very long time, pretty much her entire life since they were both kiddos, and like she has seen Celine do it and she has helped Celine do it, so she knows how, but she doesn't actually have done it yet. And then also her main thing is about the elves. She obviously cares for Orlais and her nation, but she is for the elves. All of her anything is going to be pro-Elven. So if you're pro-Elven and that's all you care about, then Briala is your gal. But other than that, there's really nothing going for her as far as like Orlesian or if something for Orlais goes and benefits for Orlais. It's just better treatment of elves, but there's going to be a lot of backlash within the country and the nobles, and there might be a lot of chaos within the nation.
Does it feel in some sense? I mean, if you were looking at it purely from a humanitarian standpoint, I kind of feel like that's the way the game frames it by default. Is she's the only true humanitarian pick because otherwise the elves are going to continue to suffer. Do I read too much into that, or do you kind of agree with that, or at least that's what the game is trying to present?
I think it's close to that, but she definitely has this side of elves before humans a little bit. But I think that. It's with Briala, you can't put her on the throne yourself. You either have to go through Gaspard or you have to go with reuniting Celine and Briala. I think that if she's alone with Gaspard, she definitely still has that mindset of elves before humans, like my people before yours, because they have been so downtrodden or whatever. But if you reunite her with Celine, which there's a whole other aspect of should they get together in a relationship aspect, but that's another story. She has like this softened of now it's going to be a more compromise of like the two of Celine's way of thinking and then the humanitarian way of the elves. With Gaspard, she's just going to do it without, compromise or whatever, and that could lead to a lot of chaos. So I think in a way, reuniting her with Celine kind of would probably control that a little bit better. So, and like ease it in and probably make it easier for the society to handle it. And it was already kind of going that way. So before the events of the Masked Empire, like if nothing had happened, if there wasn't Gaspard going in and trying to steal the throne, if there wasn't, the whole thing with the Alluvians that's in the book, Celine and Briala would probably be the way Orlais was going to go. So if you wanted to continue Orlais on the trajectory that's the choice you want. So,
That makes sense. Do you think there's an argument? I don't know if there's an argument for this, but does Briala feel like the best spy out of all of them? Like, even in a way better than Celine or better at the game? Because I kind of feel like Gaspard and Celine know about each other, right? They're kind of like the known players, and obviously at some point they start to, they know Briala's in there, but she kind of seems like the fact that she's able to mastermind it somewhat from the shadows. I don't know. I've always sensed her as being like the best spy out of all of them.
I think in the book it also frames her as that because on top of at least in the novel, it's kind of hard to describe without going into the whole thing, but she makes a power move and betrays Celine at the very last second while they're still a couple. Mm-hmm. So she uses their relationship to essentially gain control of the Alluvians. And it's so with the Alluvians and then with like the things that she's willing to do, and it also like the book kind of has this weird like parallel where it's trying to say that Briala is a lot like Fen'Harel's or Solas, I guess. So and they think a lot of the same. And so if Solas is supposed to be the best spy there was because he brought down like, I don't know, however many elven gods, and Briala is supposed to be very similar to that, then yeah, she probably would be the better spy out of the other two.
That's a good point. What are their greatest? I guess as we've kind of covered each of them in summary. So it seems like Briala, like you said, kind of a no-brainer for the elven playthrough. I think that was the one time when I did it. What's her greatest? I mean, what's the major drawback? I feel like Gaspard's major drawback is the guy he actively wants to invade another country, which is probably not good in general. What's the major drawback for Celine and Briala?
The major drawback for that one is that people, it's pretty common knowledge that they were lovers, and that's very scandalous. So now if they learn, like if they see them around all the time, because like at the end when you reunite them, both of them come up and give a speech, the rumors are going to start flying,
right?
So I think with that the people already don't really like Celine because she has the weaker Orlais. So if she's already like sleeping with an elven woman and whatnot, and that's really scandalous, there's going to be a lot of backlash, like bards being sent for her and assassins. Like people are going to want to get her out. So it's in a way, okay, kind of think of it as what's going on in our own political climate where people really don't like Donald Trump. So think of that, but in Orlais with Selena Briala.
There would be upheaval sort of the political climate entirely if they were.
Yeah, because how dare she like the elves are basically slaves, like they're kind of paid, but it's not much. So if trying to treat them better, it's going to like, but now we have to pay my servants more or whatever, and it's going to be kind of hard to do that. People are going to get their panties in a wad. So that's kind of where it is.
But isn't Celine the status quo though? I mean, technically she's still the empress.
Yes. People don't like her.
Because there's that. So yeah, I guess. No, I see what you're saying. I think on a like sort of a meta list. So which one is like your favorite pick? I think I'm still gonna say Gaspard, and I'll say why kind of in a second, and then maybe and then I think I can segue us into another one.
Well, there's one more choice we haven't gone over yet. The truce.
Go over the truce for me.
So you can actually, if you get enough information of all three of them, you can make all three work together as one giant emperor.
I don't know if I've ever done. I've never done this.
Yeah, it's a weird one because like Celine and Briala don't get back together, and it's not like Briala working in the shadows, but now they have this. Essentially, what it is that the Inquisitor has so much blackmail on the three of them. The Inquisitor is almost manipulating them to do what's best for the Inquisition, if that makes any sense. So it's a very big power play. My as much as like that one's cool, especially if you're playing a power hungry Inquisitor, the problem with that one is as soon as you disband the Inquisition, there is nothing keeping those three together, and they're gonna fall apart.
So this is perfect, right? Because that's kind of the direction that I was going. I'd forgotten about that one. I don't think I've ever done it. I think the most I did was I looked up how to do it at one point, but I don't think I did. My sort of like meta level commentary on it was, so if we talk about a power hungry Inquisition, I don't know that a truce makes sense. Like if we're looking at it on a macro level of politics, I think if you were role playing a power hungry Inquisition, you probably do go with Gaspard, right? Because like a really stable Orlais is not necessarily conducive to a power hungry Inquisition. If Orlais, let's say Orlais like has this equilibrium, and so then they have like a really stable relationship with, you know, Navarra and Ferelden. It's like, I'm more of the mindset of like, the more stable things are in Thedas, the less the Inquisition is needed, and the less they can sort of make a power play. You kind of want things like not total chaos, but just kind of like in a semi state of unrest, and then the Inquisition's sort of value is sort of raised in that way. So either way, like, I mean, this isn't necessarily evidenced in the content of the game. This is more just me extrapolating. But like, if you had a ruler that was somewhat beholden to you, or at least friendly towards you, which you get no matter who you pick, they're kind of friendly towards you in return. But in particular, Gaspard sort of having notions of invading Ferelden, but in my opinion, that move would be preempted by either a Cunari or a Tevinter invasion of the South in general. I kind of feel like that sort of state of unrest kind of plays to the Inquisition's favor. But you also make a good point. Like, if you're going to disband, then that almost seems irresponsible, because those three are just going to tear each other apart once you're disbanded.
Yeah, that's what I think, at least. So my personal favorite of the three of them is reuniting Briala and Selene. Because I liked how Orlais was going. I like the piece. I like Ferelden how it is. Again, probably not what the Inquisitor should be thinking, but that's the truth. And then also, I like playing the Elven Inquisitor, so putting that in there as well. So that's my canon choice of Selene and Briala together. I think there is a great argument to say that they shouldn't get back together, because it's a very unhealthy relationship, because Selene did murder a whole bunch of elves just to prove a point that she wasn't sleeping with Briala, which was a lie. And then Selene also killed Briala's parents. But at this point, it's not even about if they should get back together. It's what's best for Orlais, and at that point, it's them banging boots. So. Yeah,
banging boots. That's a great observation, right? Relationship bad for them, good for the country. Therefore, you guys are getting back together.
And they still love each other, apparently. So, like, you know what? Like, it's a bad relationship, but everyone else is happy. So, you know, I'm just gonna show it over there and don't think about it.
Yeah, I guess my canon one really is still Gaspard. Although I'd like Selene and Briala depending on the different role plays that you might try. I just think you kind of want Orlais to be propped up enough, because how far back is the Orlesian Ferelden War from the like mainstay events of Origins? And it's like 20 years, right?
I know about 40 years, because a little less than that, because the I think it was freed in, like, the 4th year of the Dragon Age or something. Like, it was pretty young into the Dragon Age where Ferelden gained its freedom. So, like, it's only, like, 35, 40 years since, Ferelden. You know, like, most of Ferelden population that's an adult, like, they remember the war.
So I don't know, maybe I'm wrong then, right? Like, maybe you don't necessarily need such a firm hand for Orlais. I don't know why my tendency is just to say, keep Orlais slightly more nationalistic and have sort of like a firmer military. Somehow, I don't know, I can't even articulate as to why, but somehow I feel like the balance in Thedas is better if Orlais kind of is weighing down their end of the scale. I don't know if I'm butchering this explanation, but it's just like somehow they need to be strong in order for the balance to be right.
No, that makes sense to me, because you have the two powerhouses of Thedas right now is Tevinter and Orlais. If Orlais is weaker, then in the next game where we go to Tevinter, and who knows what's happening in Tevinter, they're not going to really have a good, like, what's the word, enemy, I guess, other than the Cunari, and we don't want them to win either. So Orlais, for some reason, and I don't know how it became this way, probably because of the Chantry, but it's kind of been the protector of all the other nations. Granted, it does want to take over Ferelden and Navarra, but it also doesn't want Tevinter to take over. So if it had to choose between taking over Ferelden or defeating Tevinter, they would defeat Tevinter. And that's what everyone else wants.
You did it right. That's what I was trying to say, right? Like Orlais, Navarra, and Ferelden, although unlikely allies, are still more likely than anyone siding with Tevinter.
So, which another, like, I don't want to get too much into this right now because that's probably another episode, but something you would probably have to consider as well is who is on the throne for Ferelden, because Anora, Alistair, and Anora, Alistair, the Warden, whatever combination you have of those, they're going to react differently to Gaspard, Celine, Briala as well. So.
Ooh, yeah. Anora, Gaspard, to me, is not a good.
No, well, also, I don't, like, Celine highly respects Anora. Because she recognizes that she's a bad bitch, and she's like, ooh, I like her. But she thinks Alistair's kind of a buffoon, and Alistair is really, like, Alistair on his own is really not good at, what's the word I'm looking for? Like,
diplomacy?
There it is, diplomacy. He's kind of not into it, he's a little bit sharper. So I think technically the better choice for Ferelden is having Anora to do the diplomacy and then Alistair to do the hard stuff, but that's another story. So it kind of depends on who you have on the throne. But
there's so many angles to this, it's fun. So I guess, are we satisfied somewhat on, I'm kind of still leaning more towards Gaspard, you're saying Celine and Briala together?
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, I think Gaspard for those reasons are just fine. And like but I still prefer my reasons of, like, I think it's very valid, the reasonings you're putting on, but I think I just prefer to not even take the chance, because, like, I think if I were to project where the series is going, Tevinter's not going to invade the rest of Thedas. Tevinter and Canary are going to have a war, so it doesn't, I don't think it's going to be an issue, but it might be. So that's me being me, I guess.
No, it makes sense. Like I said, I've done Briala with the Elven playthrough. I did Celine in my earliest ones. I think Celine was the first one, right? Like, Celine just kind of made more sense. And then, I don't know when I started moving more towards Gaspard, but we've already kind of touched on it, and I kind of feel like it relates into what we're talking about, which is whether or not the Inquisition should disband.
Mm-hmm. This one, I think it's one of those choices where we don't know the results yet, and I think that's a big issue on what you want to choose in the future. Like, whatever the next game comes up, I think it's going to be pretty clear what we want. If we wanted, like, oh, we start playing the game like, oh shit, I shouldn't have disbanded, or oh shit, I should have. So I think that as of right now, we don't have too much to go on.
Is there anything else like that? I'm trying to think of the comparison. I would
say the Wardens.
Wait. No, I mean, as far as, I'm sorry, I mean, is there anything else like that as far as DLC in a Bioware game leading into the sequel?
Technically, Legacy, because of Corypheus.
Okay, yeah, that's true. I mean, in a sense, but does it really make much of a difference, right? Because he pops up either way.
Yeah, not really.
Like, I'm trying to think of the implications of, because I would love for it to be like a major difference, even if it's not a major branch in the story, even if it's just the first cutscene somehow is either a big battle or a peaceful, whatever. Like, even if it's just somewhat superficial, as long as there's a big distinction based on whether or not you disbanded the Inquisition, because, like, okay, so like Legacy, technically it leads into the next game, but you're in the same place no matter what. Arrival in Mass Effect 2, I love that DLC. Technically, it sets up the beginning of Mass Effect 3, but Shepard's in the same spot. He's under military arrest no matter what. Like, you make a choice about whether or not to sacrifice the colony exactly or not, but either way, the same thing's happening. So I'm trying to figure out, like, what's the precedent and how big of a difference are we really going to see in Dragon Age 4?
I would say that the difference would be, like, I feel like in my mind what I'm seeing is that the differences is in how people talk about the Inquisition, and then also like character models that we see will either be wearing Inquisition armor or like another armor that doesn't belong to the Inquisition. So it's kind of like more soldiers. You see more soldiers and stuff like that. But at least what we've been seeing with the comics, it's kind of vague on like how the Inquisition is being handled. So I feel like they're gonna, it's gonna be a difference, but I don't know if it's gonna be as big as a difference as we'd wanted to see.
How much time? Because I'm not keeping up with the comics. How much further ahead are they chronologically? Like, do they do a time jump, or is it right after the events of Inquisition?
I don't think Knight Errant. So there's two. Oh, by the way, they just announced a new comic, Dragon Age Deception. Woo. So I don't know when that one is, but so there's Mage Killer. Mage Killer is pretty much set within the Inquisition timeline, so trashing that one. So then we got Knight Errant. That one seems pretty close to the end of Inquisition, or actually Trespasser, I should say, because Varric is Viscount. But it's pretty close, but it's not. I don't think there's a giant like couple year time jump. I think at the very maximum it's a couple months. So.
Gotcha. What do you feel about Inquisition disbanding or not disbanding?
So I think my major choice here kind of is combined with how I played the game. When I started booting up Inquisition, I felt like my character was like, I don't want to lead a giant thing. Before Trespasser even came out, I'm like, I want my character to get out of here. I don't want to lead the Inquisition. I want to leave. So, and I think Mother Giselle is also trying to like aim for that, because that speech she gives, I believe it's in, after Haven is destroyed. And she says, like, this is the time where we need to pick up the sword, and we have to be like, we can't be like the other Inquisition and keep going on. We have to learn how to lay down our sword. And that's why when you go into Trespasser, you meet Mother Giselle again, and then she asks you very pointedly, what do you want to do? And if you say you want to keep the Inquisition, she gets kind of like sharp with you, because she believes that like we've done our mission. It's time to set down. We can't be this random powerhouse, because otherwise you're going to be a giant, powerful organization and we're going to get too unruly, and exactly what the other Inquisition became. So I kind of agree with her line of thinking on that, where we've done our job. The world doesn't need a giant, another Seeker, another Templar unit. We don't need another Inquisition. We're done. So just let it go. I think that's how I play it.
That's my main feeling on it. I go to the exact same thing that you do, which is that at the beginning of Dragon Age Inquisition, like you said, when you're still at Haven, that really seems like the plan. Like, I was actually almost kind of surprised in Trespasser when they're like, well, you've got this big decision of like keep the Inquisition or not. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I thought, just like you said, Mother Giselle, even Liliana and Cassandra, I feel like they mentioned it of like, an Inquisition is formed for a specific task. And then it's disbanded. So I was kind of like, well, no, obviously we're going to disband, because that's the whole point. Otherwise, we're usurping power. So yeah, and even just personally, it's like this. They're very problematic. We just talked about it. Like, they're deciding the fate of Orlais. Mm-hmm. The Inquisition is like this non-governmental, extra-national, pseudo-religious organization, which is like now the most powerful force in Thedas. And it's like, there's just so many problems with that. My inclination is really to disband. Yeah, I think I've done one where I kept it, but yeah, mainly disband.
I would say that were it not for the Solas thing, it would make no sense other than playing a very power-hungry Inquisitor to keep it. But I can see now where if you make the argument where the Inquisition has a new goal, and that goal is to get rid of Solas. If that's what you want to make the new goal and you play it that way, I think that's perfectly reasonable. Because although when you have that little window pop up and it has the decision like, oh, the Inquisition, if you disband it, will be less powerful but more secure, versus if you keep it, it would be more powerful but less secure because there's spies in your organization. Which when reading it that way, I had no idea what to choose, because like, oh, those both are terrible. So, but yeah, I think if you want to go after Solas, and specifically in a way to I guess, kill him. When it's, there's like the friendly option versus like stop at all costs. I think you definitely want to keep the Inquisition for that. So I think that's in defense of keeping the Inquisition.
That's the main thing I was going to say as well. I mean, that's the big elephant in the room. You've got this incredibly powerful being who is, it's very unclear what exactly his plans are. Like in the large sense, it's clear what he wants, but like, how's he going to make that happen? Mm-hmm. That is the main justification for it, to kind of speak to, or to try and justify the power hungry play. Because I think in the one that I kept it together, even though Solas was definitely part of the rationale, the other part of the rationale is that Thedas is kind of a fucked up place, right? Like, this is one way to read the keep the Inquisition quote unquote power hungry, but I think this somewhat noble way to rationalize it is like, somebody needs to be a referee, right? Not necessarily a ruler, but somebody sort of needs to kind of like, I feel like it goes hand in hand with the keep Gaspard and Orlais because it balances things out better. Just basically trying to maneuver not in favor of any one country exclusively, like not being pro-Ferelden or pro-Orlesian or anything, but just kind of like constantly trying to keep the balance. Of course, that is super arrogant and you're meddling in sovereign nations' affairs and all that. It's not that justifiable, but that's kind of my mindset of keeping it.
Mm-hmm. Now, kind of going on the lines of that, because we mentioned it, what was your decision on Solas?
No, I redeem him every time. I mean, I just feel like that's the vast majority. It seems like a waste, and also it seems like it seems like it's almost kind of a false choice. I just feel like redeem is really like, it's not really all that, I don't know. What do you think? Do you ever pick the other one, and why?
Yeah, I've picked the other one before, because I've done, like, God knows how many playthrough.
Lavelle romance rage, is that what motivates it mainly?
No, it's more like, I think it depends on your relationship with Solas. So, like, I think both of us kind of have, like, a friendly relationship at the very least, where we're like, oh, he has this interesting backstory, and yeah, he's done a lot of stupid shit, but, like, I at least respect the reasons why he did them, and, like, I don't think he's a bad guy, he just he has some questionable ways to do the right thing. So, I think that's where we are, but then there's other people who are on the line of like, it doesn't matter what his intention were, he wants to kill us all. He wants to kill us all. Of course we're going to stop him at all costs. Redeem him, my ass. I think there's also another argument there of like, listen, this guy couldn't be stopped by like 8 elven gods or whatever, and then my tiny ass is supposed to stop him.
Right. While my arm is practically falling off while I stand in front of him.
Yeah, and like if you might not even be a mage, like it's very intimidating. So I err on the side of redeeming because I find that more realistic. But
yeah,
I get behind this. I don't think like stopping Solas is a bad choice either, because I think there could be a lot of like rage there and like this guy wants to kill us, so of course I'm going to stop him at all costs. So I understand it. I just prefer again the redeemed choice because it's one, I romanced him, so I think there's also that like we could do this together because I like problematic relationships in my video games, but also I don't see how we could kill Solas. I don't. Like, I think if you're going to choose to stop at all costs, I think best case scenario, we trap him behind an Alluvian. I don't think there's, like...
Yeah.
I don't know.
I really feel like I would feel differently about it if there was, like, a stab Solas in the face option. Almost maybe kind of more like Morrigan at the end of Witch Hunt. I mean, because you almost try to kill her. Like, you can throw the knife and hit her in the back or something like that.
No, you stab her in the stomach.
Oh, wait, it's not a knife throw, right? It's like a stab, and then she goes through the
you like, go up to her and was like, hey, buddy, what's up? And then you just shank her right in the stomach.
Yeah, like, to me, that actually feels more consequential. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like the Solas thing is like, ooh, I'm gonna get you in Dragon Age 4. Like, it's not as
cool. Which, can I just, like, throw that out there? How cool would it have been if they just very simply gave Morrigan 2 body textures and one of them had a giant scar on her stomach?
Wait, you're talking about like for Inquisition, like how she appears in Inquisition?
Yeah, because like you can see her tummy, you can see where she's stabbed. So if you chose to stab her, just have like a faint little scar where she was stabbed.
I don't know why I was thinking of her, because like of how she appears at the Winter Palace. She's in a dress. I'm like, you can't see her midriff. I'm like, her rags outfit, her wilds outfit.
Yeah, but she's somehow after having a baby, you're still wearing that. Props. I'm proud of you. I know people are like, oh, it's so cold. No, you show off that body, girl. I'm proud.
She's out there doing crunches in the wilderness.
Yeah, she went into no stretch marks. That's magic right there. That
is magic. That is some serious witchcraft.
Anyway.
I mean, how old is... Did they actually talk about that? Because I like it how in Witcher, like, they're actually upfront about how the fact that all the sorceresses are like hundreds of years old and they look all about 25.
She's... I think she's supposed to be around like early to mid 20s in Origins, so she's probably in like her 30s to early 40s in Inquisition. So...
No, the thing that I like about the fact is like she is aging. Like, she ages. Right? So you actually see the difference that the 10 years brought between Inquisition and Origin. She looks slightly older. I mean, still obviously, as you said, magical shape.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I actually like the fact that with her and Liliana, you can actually tell that there's a little bit of aging.
I still think Liliana looks a little bit not as old as she should look, but maybe she just has makeup
she did
on.
Come back from the dead. Well, technically, could have come back from the dead.
Yeah. She might be a weird Illyrium echo, which that's an event. But anyway, Solas.
Yeah, Solas, I just feel like... I understand there's implications for it, but I feel like that's all it is. It's implications. And at that point in time, I kind of feel like unless I had the stab him option then and there... I feel so disempowered with the I'm gonna get you as you are quite literally falling to your knees in agony, and then the guy has the good graces to help you with your arm problem anyway. It actually feels really weak and ineffectual to be like, I'm gonna stop you. Oh, could you please help me with my arm right quick?
Which the animation they have for like the enemy versus friend versus lover like arm takeoff moment is great. I don't know if you've seen the differences between them.
No. I mean, I think I have, but I've never done my romance one that I'm technically still in the middle of. I haven't gotten to Trespasser yet, so I have not seen a Solas romance one.
Well, do you want me to spoil what happens in the Solas romance one, or
no? Okay. No, I want to see this now.
That's fine. But for the friendly versus enemy, for friendly, it's kind of. I'm really bad with explaining things, and I'm also going to be motioning this, and you can see me, so this audio portion is probably going to be a bit shit. But like you as a friendly Inquisitor, you kind of like. He says like, can I have your hand? And you put it out, and he like just kind of grabs it and then does the thing.
Yeah, that's the one that I've seen.
For the enemy Inquisitor, he doesn't ask. He just yanks your arm, and you like go forward, and like you lurch a bit, and then he like gets rid of it. Like he just it's very kind of a violent animation. So
yeah, he's just a little salty about getting punched in the face. That's all.
A little bit. So which have you ever threatened to punch Solas at that moment?
I don't know if No, you're saying that you can threaten to punch him in the Trespasser showdown?
Yeah, there's an option where you can say, like, hit him or whatever if you're not very good. And you could, like, scream and, like, your Inquisitor starts to go for it. And then, like, his eyes... He just very calm. He stands there, with arms behind his back. His eyes glow. And then suddenly you're, like, even in more pain. He goes, oh, shit! Like, he can kind of control your amount of pain at that moment. So.
Yeah. Yeah, we got. I'm willing to abandon everything else on my wish list in Dragon Age 4 as long as there's an option to punch Solas again. And it's not because I don't like Solas. Like I like, tough love, right? Like we got.
Oh, okay.
I like Solas. I don't know why. I love that animation and like the his reaction and the facial animation when you punch Solas is so priceless. The only thing I want is like where you punch him and he has that exact same expression and then it waits a beat and then you punch him again. And then he can do whatever he wants after that. He can go all Fen'Haral and just tear you limb from limb. I just,
Oh man, what if? So I would want to see him like go like turn into wolf form. You do that, but he's in wolf form.
Wait, so you're gonna punch a giant wolf?
Hell yeah! And he has that like same animation where like his head whips back and goes, "How dare!" Because I don't. I feel like I don't. I feel weird saying this because it's a little bit, but it was such a like kind of feminine response to it, in my opinion. Like
it was so the opposite of his sanctimony that he puts on throughout the entire game, right? So that's why it was so satisfying. He's so smug, he's so like above it all, and then when you smack him, he's like, gasp!
Why did you do that? That was my cheek. Like he was definitely not used to being punched. So I would love to see the wolf form do that. You just see like this giant, like monstrous wolf, like.
Like I would like. This is like we're going off on this topic now, but like on that sort of thing of like I don't mind like a player getting put in. Like I can imagine if the player had the option to punch Blackwall, like it would not go that way, right? Like
you can punch Dorian.
I've never done that. You mentioned that the last time. I've never punched Dorian. I imagine Dorian, that could go a bunch of different ways. Like Iron Bull, not going to happen. Sarah, yeah, nice try, right? Like, but anyway, Solas. Yeah, I think mainly just redeem. I feel like that feels like the right thing at that point in time. To me, the point in time to, if you're going to do it, if you're going to stop him at all costs, like that, I might choose that when I feel like it's going to be of more consequence in Dragon Age 4.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so do you want to go with what's the next choice you want to talk about?
Probably the Wardens.
The Wardens are the one that I feel like I don't have a strong canon choice on because I think there's a solid argument either way. What do you prefer, if anything?
I think that they're problematic. They're problematic in a lot of the same ways that the Inquisition is, and so I feel like I have this odd double standard. Mm-hmm. That's not quite a double standard, and I think the reason for that is because presumably blights are still going to happen until I mean that gets into the whole higher level of like how many old gods spirits are there, and then you've done videos on that, etc. It's like, but presumably like there's still going to be more blights. And so there should still be wardens. As for who, I think it's a big thing about who leads them. I feel the best when Alistair is not king. And so then Alistair, you can kind of say that he's going to be the one leading them. I think that works overall the best. So yeah, I think I'd lean towards, not sacrificing them, trying to keep them around, and then hopefully having Alistair lead them.
So with joining the Inquisition, then?
Yeah, I think you roll them into the same. Mm-hmm. Although I mean, there's a point because what is it? They're quote unquote banished, right? Or they're sent off.
Yeah, they're either thrown out of. I think it's just Orlesian. I don't know if it's Ferelden too, but you either banish them back to wherever they came from, or they join the Inquisition with the forces.
Yeah, I think rolling them into the Inquisition, it makes sense. But then to me, like, even if you disband the Inquisition, I don't know. I guess that gets kind of muddy, right? Are you disbanding the Wardens also?
No, like, they just kind of go back to, not Weishaupt, but Adamant Fortress and chill out there.
Yeah.
So, there's the big thing in my mind that, like, I think kind of influences this decision for me a little bit is that at the very end of the game, the Wardens are all of the Wardens in Thedas are called back to Weishaupt. That's a lot. If you don't if you exile the Wardens, they're obviously already at Adamant or Weishaupt, sorry. But if they're with the Inquisition, they don't go. They're the only Wardens that go, we're fine over here. We don't, like, they kind of divorce themselves away from the Wardens. So you technically now have the giant big group of Wardens and the people at Adamant. And I don't know if that's a good thing or not. Like, we don't know what's going on with the Wardens. We're already, like, kind of a little bit iffy on what's going on with them and the civil war that could be happening. Meanwhile, the people at Adamant are just, like, sitting there, like, smoking and drinking and be like, who gives a shit? We fine over here. So I think with that regard, I kind of like the tiny cell of Wardens. That if these people all explode and destroy each other, at least we got these guys. So that's kind of how I see it. At the same time, like, it kind of sucks that this was never even brought up in the game. But Corypheus can still control Wardens. He still has, like, that mind control thing. So having them on your team seems like a really bad idea. but they never explore that at all. So I think the weight of the choice of like you have this little cell of wardens that's protected from whatever the civil war is going on, but you also have them like the Inquisition is more be easily manipulated. They don't really explore that side, so it almost seems like why disband the wardens unless you want all the wardens together?
It's yeah, you're right. The consequences of it aren't explored enough, I think. Mm-hmm. And so I guess in that regard, maybe I would feel differently if you could see the consequences a little bit more, as like say if the Corypheus control. I think the reason why I have the double standard sort of in how I think of the Wardens and how I think of the Inquisition is because the Wardens have been around for so damn long. Mm-hmm. And it's just like there's this sort of like really old organization that has a really important function that's going to come up again. Mm-hmm. Somehow that if you can take steps to preserve them, you should. I mean, I think there is an argument that maybe best preserving them is sending them out of Orlais for their own good, mm-hmm. and not having them join the Inquisition. But then when you bring up the aspect of like what happens towards the end, where they're all sort of gathering at Weishaupt, that's probably not good. Whatever's going on there, that's probably not good. So it might be good to have a cell broken off that could maybe, preserve themselves, preserve the history of the Warden, so to speak. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. That's another thing. Like, if you wanted to, keep Orlais strong, having Wardens in their borders just in case a blight breaks out would probably help keep Orlais strong. So,
would the nobles feel that way, given their history with the Wardens?
Orlais's been pretty cool with the Wardens. Like they don't Ferelden hates the Wardens because of the coup, and that's a whole other story. But Orlais they're pretty friendly with it now. Pretty much everywhere, because it was kind of brought up in Dragon Age 2, but there's rumors that the fifth blight wasn't really a blight because it was so short. So there's people are saying that it was a Warden conspiracy theory to try to make people remind people that the Wardens were so important and needed. But that regardless, before the fifth blight, people were thinking that the Wardens were just kind of useless. There's no more blights. The last blight was the last one. We don't need to worry about it anymore. It was kind of useless. So they were still around. It's this weird thing where Orlais tolerated them, but they knew their importance, and they were too worried to get rid of them.
When you mentioned that, is there a theory that Flemeth started the fifth blight, or am I just imagining that?
There might be. I don't remember one. We do know that technically the Architect started the fifth blight, because he found the Archdemon and tried to make it take that joining ritual he had to try to free the Archdemon, and it didn't work, and he just freed the Archdemon and started the fifth blight.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the Wardens are concerning also, because they have this, the treaties are a weird. I mean, I guess technically they're treaties, so all these countries agreed to it, but they seem to wield a lot of power. They're problematic in that sense, but overall, I don't know why. I think maybe it's just my affinity for the Warden and Hero Ferelden and Origins that I'm no, the Warden's got to stay and be great.
Yeah, I don't trust the Wardens, but I do trust that they at least want to keep Thedas alive. So in that regards, I might not like their methods, but they're the only one. They're the only thing that works. So keep them. Solas really doesn't like the Wardens. I think there is something wrong with the Wardens and their methods, but we have no other alternatives, so I will have to keep them,
They need reforming though, right? That's why I feel best when Alistair is a Warden, because in Inquisition, obviously they go pretty far in depicting them as being totally self-interested. To the point where it's blood magic and summoning demons. Well, whether or not that was them being influenced by what's his face, Corypheus' lackey.
Magister Livimund Aramis, or whatever that is.
Yeah. But it seems like their fear is so easily sort of exploitable that their self-interest is so high, they would fuck everything else. The Warden's got to survive. That's super problematic also. So yes, having them join the Inquisition, I think, problematic, and maybe if the impacts were sort of evidenced more in the game, I would feel differently, but I kind of feel like it's better to keep them close.
Yeah. Keep your enemies close. Yeah, that's kind of what I lean towards doing. There's definitely just been playthroughs where I'm like, man, I don't fucking know. What companions do I need the most approval of right now? And I almost feel like if you're kind of metagaming it a little bit, like it's kind of almost better to just choose what like approval you need, because there like is no effects in the game at all. It does not change anything in the story. So
I will say. Oh wait, what time? How much time do we have time to do one more, or did we get to all of the ones we wanted to do?
We're getting close, but there's probably also a lot we have to cut out. So if you want to do like a quick one, maybe.
What was the last one?
Cole.
Cole. How do we feel about Cole? Cole, to me, I don't know if I feel passionately about this one, either one, because I don't feel like one is bad.
Yeah, that's one. Cole's choice is one I really like because there isn't a wrong choice; they're just different.
Yeah.
So do you have a preference though?
Yeah, I think it's more human. I think I've leaned that. But now I'm getting confused. Varric advocates for more human, yes?
Yes.
And Solas advocates for more spirit.
Yes.
I think it's just because I like Varric more. I literally think that that's what it comes down to. If I remember it correctly, he seems happy as a spirit. He seems happy in being more human. It seems like, whatever the kid wants, right? Like I feel like almost like a parent or an older sibling going like, whatever makes you happy. As long as you're happy, whatever's good for you. But I think I just like Varric more, and Varric seems like the uncle in the situation. He's like, I gotta be more human. I'm like, listen to Uncle Varric, be more human.
See, I like the spirit better, and I will say originally it was just because of Solas, because I was romancing him at the time of my first playthrough. I was like, I don't fucking know. But I think learning more, reading Asunder, learning, doing all the poo-poo, whatever, I still lean more towards spirit, because Cole is not Cole. Cole is a spirit, He just took on someone's personality. That's kind of creepy when you think about it. Like, if for some reason he didn't, but if the real Cole survived, there would just be two Coles. And I'm sure the other Cole would be kind of freaked out that there's a spirit who looks and acts and thinks just like him. That's a little bit odd to me. And on top of that, the spirit of Cole, he is a very rare and precious spirit, as Solas explains, where it's compassion. He does a lot of, good things for people. Don't you want more of those rather than demons? And then I don't know, it's kind of like a mix of Cole, the person, died, we should let him die. You, the spirit of Cole, need to be yourself, do the job you're meant to do, and be who you are. You don't need to change because this personality you put on died. This personality, he's really just kind of reincarnating Cole. It's kind of strange like that. So I guess that's why I go for more spirit, because the Cole we meet isn't Cole, and I don't think he should be.
That's a very compelling argument.
So that's kind of my reasoning towards it. Now they kind of explain it that he's happy no matter what, but with human, it's there's happiness and sadness, and it's that range of emotions, whereas he's a spirit, it's just kind of the flatline placid, everything's pretty much pretty good, because that's how all spirits are. And so it's kind of where you want to go. I will also say I like Krem and Meriden more than Cole and Meriden. I don't know, I've always saw Cole as this asexual creature. To see him talking about making love to a woman, it's ooh, I didn't want to know that.
Is it also just because he's young? Is that part of it?
No, because he's not that young. He's in his early 20s or whatnot.
Is that his age range by canon?
Well, it's I think the specific wording of it is that he's 20 no more. If he's 20, he just turned 20. He's still pretty young. So
oh, that's interesting. I don't know if it's just maybe his innocence or his I always pegged him as 17, 18, young.
It's never, because the only thing we have is a note written from this woman in the book Asunder, and she's trying to describe Cole to herself because she keeps forgetting him, and she just writes that he's 20 no more. Like, it's he's kind of in that weird in between stage of teenager and young adult. So he could be 17, 18 and just looks a bit older. So
that's interesting. No, your argument for him being a spirit is really compelling. I feel pretty whatchamacallit, not convinced, but I'm definitely swayed by that. Mm-hmm. I guess on the other hand, the part of it that I like, because I hear what you're saying about how, like, he is a spirit, he's not Cole. I guess the part of me that the human side appeals to is, like, I don't know, like, in a weird way, maybe I'm totally, as I typically do, reading too much into Dragon Age, but it's just like, is there this weird meta level of, like, what is consciousness, what is a person, like, can he choose to actually be someone like the Cole, or essentially like the Cole that died? You know, is that just, I don't know, there's a part of me that just thinks that that's cool of that happening. But your argument for the spirit side is very compelling.
Well, like I said, like, it could go either way. Both of them are, I think, work as choices. I prefer the spirit because I kind of like that message of don't change yourself just because other people are find it more easy to talk to Cole rather than Cole the spirit. So I think that's also more like going into like how I grew up and like I didn't want to change for nobody because I was that kid. So I think there's elements of that, but I think it's interesting that like those elements of myself are brought into this choice, you know. So I think it's one of the more interesting and complex choices in the game, and I wish they had a little bit more screen time of it. But even like what we get's pretty good. Like there's pretty strong differences between Cole Spirit and Cole Human. So
it's a great choice, and like I said, I like it, and you mentioned it for the same reason. You don't feel like there's a bad choice in there. Like they both have really strong appeal, and they both feel really satisfying. Ultimately, it feels like by doing that, you help Cole.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the better like character choices. Like I can't really think of another character choice that really, well, maybe Bulls, but other than that, like they all kind of like feel a little bit empty somewhat. Specifically Solas, like he have like this, you know, really great setup of like, oh, let him kill the people, let him not save his friends, save his not, and then it's like nothing happens.
Right.
So killing the mages isn't even in to keep, so whatever.
All right, well, I think we got through all of the ones that we wanted to discuss today. Anything we left out? Anything else we should cover before we close?
If I can think of anything, we probably don't have enough time to discuss it, so I'm going to say no. But if we didn't go over something and you did want to hear us about it, we can always go back to it. This is one of those things that we can just go over different choices. Oh, we never did go over the Well of Sorrows or not, but like that's I think too much at this point. But
we can definitely. This is what Bioware games are all about. Dragon Age has tons of these. Mass Effect has these as well. So absolutely, like you said, recommendations, right? If people want to hear us talk over certain ones, let us know in the comments, Twitter, etc., and we can do probably multiple episodes like this.
Is there any like news or anything about our channel? No. Okay. I keep thinking we need to like advertise for that streaming thing, but we already did it. So I don't know why that's on my mind.
We might be doing more streaming. Who knows? Stay tuned. TBA.
Yeah. Which we need to talk about that. So.
We'll talk about that as soon as we're done with this episode.
Okay. So with that, where can people find you?
People can find me on YouTube, obviously, under The Exalted March, on Twitter, and on Instagram at The Exalted March.
And I'm on Twitter as Ghildirthalen, and YouTube as Ghildirthalen, and Reddit as Ghillanon, if for some reason you want to come and say hi. If you want to have any requests, that's the word I'm looking for. If you have any requests of things you want us to talk about, feel free to send it to either Jordan or I do get them. I have gotten a lot of requests, which I have yet to tell you because I'm a terrible person, because I have been so busy this past month. I can't believe it's already June. It's a nightmare. But we've gotten a couple of requests. I have gotten them. They're on our list to talk about it, see if we actually want to do it or not. But thank you so much for that. And with that, guys, Darasharon.